We should mention this is a pretty important moment in Tazz's wrestling career. It's on a WWE DVD somewhere where he says something like when he broke into wrestling, he had 3 goals. You know, 1 to make a living in wrestling, 2 to hold any championship belt, and 3 to wrestle in the Garden. And this sort of, finish his last goal. And he sort of overcometh that on his ride to the building. And he talked about that on, I think it was the Rise and Fall of ECW, where he talks about calling Paul Heyman, where things didn't exactly go as planned. He hadn't been on the best terms with Paul on the exit, but he handled his business, and now he's overcome with emotion and wants to call and talk to him on the way in. And he's about to wrestle an Olympic gold medalist and hand that gold medalist his first defeat in the Garden. And you're debuting at the first $1 million gate in the history of WWE in Madison Square Garden. Big moment. So go back and watch this. This is a really special moment in wrestling history. But the next match, man, it's another barn burner. And this is worth the price of admission here. It's the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys. They're doing a double tables match. The rule here is you've got to put both members through a table. And again, we're not getting a lot of time, but we're making the most of our time. 10 minutes, 18 seconds. Meltzer gives it 3.25 stars. I absolutely love it. The big spot here, of course, is, we've got Bubba taking the Nestea plunge backwards off the balcony through a bunch of tables. We've also seen Jeff Hardy do the big dive off the top. Just really a remarkable match. And this crowd is ready for it. They're hot, and the crowd really adds a lot to this match. I loved it. Watching it back was a real treat.
All 4 of those guys have the ability, and still do in a large sense, in my view, to connect with the audience. They know their role. They knew what their position on the team they were playing. They got it. And, I hope Jeff gets back on track, but getting back in the wrestling business on full time is not good for his health. He should pass. That's just a good old JR's advice. It ain't your obligation to get back on the front line if it's not doing yourself any favors. Matt Hardy's one of the great minds in wrestling, in my view. I think Matt Hardy could help a lot of people, and he should be able to help a lot of people. These 2 kids, I signed them, the Hardy Boys, and one of the neat stories they told me that they were raised by a single father who was a rural mail carrier, and that they made their own wrestling gear off an old sewing machine that I guess their mom might have had at one time. They made their own gear, teenagers, and they weren't big muscle guys, which we all remember, but god dang, they had great passion and they had amazing courage, so they were special. And Matt's really special now, and I'd love to work with Matt again someday, and hopefully I will. But Bubba, you hear Bubba's great work on Busted Open with Dave LaGreca and all those cats. Bubba's got a great mind. And between Bubba and Matt, not discounting the other 2 guys, but between Bubba and Matt, you had 2, what I believe could be great bookers, calling the shots of their match. And they made those matches extraordinary. So you're right, Conrad. Meltzer gives it a 3.25 stars. I might venture to say he might have been a little low on that.
Yep, I would agree. Really a special match. Go out of your way to see this one. It's just fantastic. And these guys, are hitting on all cylinders here. Next up is something interesting that we could probably not ever see again. It's a Miss Royal Rumble bikini contest. And it was pretty strongly promoted leading into this that there were going to be judges, including Edge and Freddie Blassie. It turns out that there's no Edge, no mention of him whatsoever. Instead, the judges wind up being Freddie Blassie, Sergeant Slaughter, Tony Gurria, Fabulous Moolah, Johnny V, and Andy Richter from the Conan O'Brien show. Ivory comes out. Terry's here. Jacqueline is doing her thing. BB, who a lot of people may have forgotten. You'll be reminded when you see her.
She's great.
Luna's here. Kat's here. And Meltzer's pretty critical. He says Ivory came out looking like a mid-30s woman bodybuilder with implants, which is basically what she is. Terry came out.
And is that so bad?
No.
Is that bad?
No.
Did they mean that to be a knock or just an overall observation? Because Ivory she did so much good stuff for us. It's amazing. She took, she was an experienced, skilled worker, just like Jackie Moore. And they took their time and their patience to make a lot of these young divas passable in the ring. So Ivory was what a MVP she was, as was Jackie. But when I read that, about that deal and how he described that, I said, well, is that wrong? Come on.
He would also write, Terry came out in a very skimpy one piece. Jacqueline did a total stripper routine. Bibi didn't get the pop you'd think. Luna refused to disrobe and appeared to be very unhappy about even being a part of this, which I'm presuming is probably more storyline than anything. Kat, who was the only one in the group who had a body that didn't look like it was created by science, came out wearing a bikini made out of air bubbles that you would mail things in.
That was Lawler's idea, by the way.
Mae Young came out, removed her top, and was declared the unanimous winner. This is, my goodness, what a segment, what an era. What do you remember about this? And
strictly comedy. It's a let me up match, as Vince used to say, because we're getting ready to get some more heavy duty wrestling, and he didn't want all wrestling on a wrestling show. He really worked hard to make sure that we had entertainment content within. And when you have your primary demographic are males 18 to 49 and 18 to 34, then the bikini contest seemed to be catering to them as it should. So it was just let me up, a comedy, just see what everybody's wearing, and was kind of cool. And of course, the star of the show was Mae Young, and why not?
I do not hate this next match though, because it's just weird. It's Chris Jericho in a 3-way with Chyna and Bob Holly. And this is a wrestling match, not a porn. Meltzer would say, can you imagine what kind of a physique Holly would have if he actually took steroids? Chyna ruined the match. There were only a few points where the fans booed her weak offense, but clearly they weren't happy with the prospect of her as champ. The gimmick of her in the ring as a title contender has now run its course. The finish made me think they realized it, but after the Rumble, you can see Jericho's still going to be married to her. With the way they're booking, married might actually be the apropos word. Jericho had the walls on Holly, and Chyna made the save with a weak clothesline, and the crowd booed heavily. Chyna then used a pedigree on Holly, but he kicked out. Jericho does a crossbody off the top while Chyna was on Holly's shoulders, but she kicks out, and then Chyna superplexed Holly off the top, and after a few near falls, Chyna gets the Boston Crab on Holly, and the crowd is booing heavily. Jericho does the run-in, breaks it up, and gives a facebuster and Cubrata for the pin. Even though Jericho did the coolest moves in the ring, Holly is actually the best worker of this trio. Star and a quarter. Leading into this, Chyna and Jericho had been together for months. Back at even Survivor Series, when Chyna was the Intercontinental Champ, she beats Jericho. She loses the title to him the following month at Armageddon. They're facing off on the last SmackDown of the year, where they're both pinning each other. And as a result, they become co-champions. They briefly team up for a little bit. And I don't know, Meltzer didn't love it. And certainly the fans in the crowd didn't love it that night. Do you think this was just a failed experiment? Chyna in here with the men?
Experiment. I don't know. I didn't love it either. I thought it was, I don't like, this is going to piss some people off, and so you can be pissed off, you choose. I'm at JRSBBQ. So tweet away. And I don't have a problem with it, because your opinion is just as viable as mine. My opinion is I'm not a fan of intergender wrestling. Well, he didn't like Tessa Blanchard. No, I love Tessa Blanchard. I'd known Tessa Blanchard since she was a little girl. I'm great friends with her father. I was great friends with her grandfather, Joe Blanchard. So I got a lot of respect for the Blanchard family. This has nothing to do with Tessa per se. It has to do with the booking of intergender matches. And you can bet with the success that she has earned in Impact Wrestling, there'll be other promotions and indies that will try to replicate that while strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. I think it's unrealistic. I've had these talks, I had long talks, and some were very stern with Joni, who always took this shit personally. Well, you just don't want the women to get over it. No, that's stupid, Joni. Joni, that makes no sense. Why would I even want that? look at it. What do I do for a living here? To get stars over. So we work on. I think it's a short-term deal. It's a hot shot booking, and it's an eye roller because it's really not that realistic. And boy, I remember when we talked to her about wrestling, being the women's champion. She could be our Hogan in that division. Oh, she didn't want to do that because she didn't want to wrestle the other women. And you know why that was true? Because a lot of the other women, like Jackie Moore and like Ivory, were better workers than Chyna. Chyna had the look, the feel, the appeal, the charisma that the others didn't quite have because of her size. But the intergender thing was a pain in the ass. It was just, even the boys said, God, how long are we going to do this? The guy said, I'm not going to sell for her. I'm not going to do this. Well, of course, you're getting paid. You'll do what the hell you need to do to earn your money. But it wasn't a good thing. The booking wasn't good. And that's got nothing to do with Chris Jericho. I love Chris Jericho. He's the AEW champion. He's the reverend of reinvention. But it just was a loser from the start, the get-go, but he had to endure it, and he went through it. Hey, Chris Jericho almost had to reinvent himself again then to pull this stuff off because it just was illogical and didn't make a lot of sense to me. So if I haven't pissed all of you off that love the intergender stuff, you should love it. If that's what you like, then like it. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just telling you my opinion. I don't think it's realistic. And there's, never a bloody nose. It was like powder puff stuff. I didn't like it. And I don't think it, and of course you heard the crowd in the garden, as you said, Conrad, they didn't like it. They shit on it. And you got Hall of Fame talent in the ring, they got doo-dooed on. And because the fans didn't like the concept.
What do you think of, putting Bob Holly in the mix? I mean, so far it's really been the Jericho Chyna show, and
somebody had to lose.
Okay.
He was a designated fall dropper in that one, and it is also there were a lot of guys in the success of WWE during the Attitude Era and the around that time that were unsung heroes. Bob Holly was one of those unsung heroes. He always showed up for work, ready to work his ass off, and to be the toughest guy on the card. And I love that attitude. But there are a lot of other dudes that were on that roster as well that were kind of unsung. They filled in gaps. They filled in voids. And on this night, the WWE needed someone to drop the fall in that match, and they didn't want to beat Jericho or Chyna. So Bobby Holly was the designatee, and he did a great job doing it.